There's a moment no one warns you about. You stare at your phone and realize it quietly turned into a graveyard of half-alive connections. Messages opened and never answered. Invitations seen and silently ignored. Group chats muted because even the idea of replying feels heavy. Birthdays remembered but not acknowledged, because every interaction feels like extra weight on a body that is already exhausted. What once felt worth wanting now looks like a list of obligations you never really agreed to carry. And behind every unanswered message, a quieter question keeps echoing. When did all of this stop feeling worth wanting? On the outside, their life might still look fine. They show up to work, pay their bills, post something once in a while, laugh in the right places. Friends might even say they're doing well. Some goals were actually achieved, boxes were checked. Dreams that once seemed distant are now technically part of their reality. But inside, there is a numbness that doesn't match the script. It feels like their heart has been put in airplane mode. Present, beating, but strangely disconnected from everything that used to move them. Things they once begged for now barely register as a pulse. In quieter moments, the internal interrogation begins. Did I burn out my capacity to feel? Is this depression? Is it just laziness? Is there something deeply wrong with me that no one else seems to have? They replay old expectations and compare them to the flatness of the present. Somewhere beneath all the self-doubt, a more dangerous and honest question appears. When did everything stop feeling worth wanting? And right behind it, another whisper that is even more unsettling. What if this isn't you breaking, but you outgrowing an entire way of wanting that was never really yours? That is where this whole journey truly begins. Most advice for this kind of crisis sounds suspiciously repetitive. Set new goals, create a new routine, think positive, reinvent yourself, hustle harder. So this person tries. They buy planners, start new habits, sign up for courses, design morning routines, write lists of dreams. They watch motivational videos and repeat mantras about focus and discipline. For a short while, there is a tiny spike of energy, a brief illusion that maybe this time the system will work again. But like a movie they've seen too many times, every new plan eventually fades into the same gray feeling. After enough failed attempts, they get tired of pretending that the problem is a lack of effort or a weak character. They know how to chase things. They've proven they can force themselves, sacrifice comfort, push through resistance. They've tried gratitude lists, visualizations, affirmations on sticky notes, high-performance books promising to turn them into a machine. None of it sticks. The more they try to manufacture motivation, the more fake it feels, like blowing air into a balloon that has too many invisible holes. This no longer feels like resistance. It feels like the engine of wanting itself is worn out. Seen from a more honest angle, the crisis stops looking like pure failure and starts looking like data. Maybe nothing is wrong with their willpower or intelligence. Maybe what is collapsing is not them, but an old way of desiring that simply doesn't fit who they are becoming. This is not about dragging back the old hustle version of themselves by force. It's about understanding why that version died and what new kind of desire is quietly trying to be born underneath the ruins. To see that clearly, they first have to return to a moment most people avoid examining, the day they finally got what they wanted and still felt empty. There is a very specific heartbreak that doesn't come with tears, screaming, or dramatic scenes. It happens on the day someone finally achieves something they were absolutely sure would change everything. The relationship becomes official. The long-awaited job offer arrives. The move to the dream city finally happens. The bank account reaches the magic number they always imagined would mean, "I made it." People congratulate them, send messages, comment "so proud of you," and they try to step into the role of the happy, fulfilled version of themselves they had pictured for so long. But when the noise fades and they are finally alone, a quieter, more embarrassing sentence appears inside their chest. "I got what I wanted, and it didn't fix the emptiness." It's like having spent years chasing a beautifully wrapped gift box down endless corridors. They imagined, rehearsed, and romanticized the moment of finally opening it. Yet when the day comes, they tear the paper, lift the lid, and find mostly air. There might be a small object inside, a brief rush, a short-lived high, but nothing close to the weight of all the meaning they had placed on that box. If they are truly honest with themselves, they'll realize this isn't the first time the pattern appears. A new dream shows up, a different partner, a better job, a new city, a bigger number, and they whisper, "This time it will feel different." But the sequence repeats with uncanny precision. The scenery changes, the core emptiness doesn't. The problem is not that they are asking too much from life. It's that deep down, their inner system has started to realize that a certain style of desire never delivers what it promises. Once that realization begins to form, it becomes harder and harder to unsee. And that is usually the moment they unknowingly step onto the infinite treadmill of desire. Most people are raised inside a subtle game called, as soon as I get that job, as soon as I earn that salary, as soon as I meet that person, as soon as I move to that neighborhood or that country, then I'll feel grounded, safe, fulfilled. So they pick a goal, hang it in front of them like a neon sign, and start running toward it with everything they have. They grind, they sacrifice weekends, they swallow their feelings, they do whatever it takes. When they finally reach the goal, there's a quick rush, a momentary peak, a sense of, maybe this is it. But almost immediately, a new goal appears a few steps ahead. From the outside, this looks admirable. Society calls it ambition, drive, hunger. Social media celebrates it with inspirational quotes about never settling and always leveling up. Conferences sell it as the secret of success. People who never stop chasing are applauded as heroes of productivity. But deep inside, the nervous system keeps track of a different truth. No matter how fast they run, the horizon never truly gets closer. It's as if they are on a treadmill in the gym, sweating, increasing the speed, burning calories, while the scenery remains exactly the same. It's movement without arrival, effort without rest. At some point, a quiet rebellion starts inside the body and mind. The brain begins to protect them from a game that no longer makes sense, slowly turning down the volume on excitement for the next big thing. Projects that would have once lit them up now feel strangely flat. Promotions, launches, achievements that should sound like trumpets feel like background noise. They are not ungrateful. They are lucid. A more honest part of them has realized that the treadmill was never designed to let them arrive. When nothing feels worth wanting anymore, it might not be a sign that they failed the treadmill. It might be proof that they finally recognized it as a treadmill. And when that clarity lands, the body itself starts sending even louder signals that something needs to change. There is a kind of tiredness that sleep alone cannot touch. The alarm rings, and even if they technically slept enough hours, they wake up feeling like they've been carrying a truck on their back. The day ahead doesn't look like a series of meaningful tasks. It looks like a long hallway they're expected to walk down for no clear reason. Things that used to give them a little spark, a Friday night out, a new project at work, a trip they once would have celebrated, now feel strangely heavy, as if gravity quietly increased around those exact activities. Procrastination starts to look less like bad habits and more like the body's quiet protest against walking into rooms that feel meaningless. Sometimes this shows up in painfully ordinary scenes. They sit across from someone on what should be a romantic date, or stand in front of an incredible view on a long-awaited vacation, and instead of feeling alive, a single thought keeps looping. Can I go home already? They look around and see people laughing, taking selfies, living the moment, and feel like an actor who no longer believes in the script of the play they're performing. They know the lines, they know the cues, they can smile on command, but none of it feels connected to anything real inside their chest. To be clear, there can absolutely be medical, hormonal, and psychological factors that need proper attention here. Ignoring that would be irresponsible. Therapy, medical checkups, exams, and professional support matter immensely. Yet many people discover that even after their results return normal, something inside still feels profoundly unwilling. That is when another layer of truth begins to emerge. The body often stops cooperating with a life the soul no longer believes in. It drags its feet, shuts down enthusiasm, and sabotages schedules that only extend an existence built on borrowed wants. And once that happens, the person finds themselves in a strange in-between space, not fully committed to their old life, but not yet anchored in anything new. A corridor between two ways of living. This corridor rarely announces itself with a clear sign saying, "Now entering transformation." It usually appears as a fog that gradually thickens until they realize they can no longer see the path behind or ahead with clarity. Behind them lies a room they know well. The old life, the old roles, the old ambitions, the old identity that once felt like home, but now fits like clothes that shrank in the wash. They know exactly how to play that version of themselves, but every step inside that script feels like a small form of self-betrayal. Ahead of them, however, there is no polished new life waiting with a grand welcome. There is just blur. No clear purpose statement, no shiny new plan, no epic career pivot they can neatly explain at parties. It's more like sitting in a movie theater after the credits have rolled, before the lights turn on. The story is over, people are getting up, grabbing their bags, leaving. They stay seated, eyes adjusting to the dimness, wondering, do I stay? Do I go? Is there another movie coming, or am I just done with this show? That in-between moment, too quiet and too unclear, is exactly what the corridor feels like on the inside. In that space, shame loves to visit. They judge themselves for not functioning like before, for not having a 5-year plan, for not caring about goals that everyone else still seems to worship. They feel guilty for not being able to force their old ambition back to life, for not being as excited, productive, or driven as the version of themselves they once admired. They fear that the numbness is permanent, that they've broken something unfixable. But what if this corridor is not a punishment or a dead end, and more like a waiting room? Not a waiting room for some external miracle to rescue them, but for a more honest form of desire to finally wake up inside. The problem is that, terrified by this uncertainty, most people rush into 3 predictable strategies, and each one, unfortunately, makes the emptiness louder. The first reflex, when nothing feels worth wanting, is to grab onto a new lifeboat with desperate intensity. A new relationship that will finally make them feel alive. A dramatic career change that promises meaning and passion overnight. A grand project or spiritual path that seems like the answer. For a while, it almost works. There's novelty, adrenaline, hope. Friends comment on how excited and driven they look again. It feels like maybe they've outrun the emptiness. But little by little, the same familiar flatness seeps in through the cracks, and that big new beginning becomes just another lap on the same invisible track. On the surface, it looks like courage. Inside, it tastes like déjà vu. When that effort loses its magic, many people slide into the second strategy, numbing harder. They turn up the volume of distractions. Endless scrolling, binge watching, constant background noise, compulsive eating, drinking, gaming, working, anything that keeps them from having to sit alone with their inner silence. At first, this feels like relief, like turning on loud music to avoid hearing an argument in the next room. But there is a brutal cost. The more they anesthetize themselves, the more they lose the ability to feel anything at all, including the faint signals of what might actually be genuine desire. Life becomes one long blur of next episode, next video, next notification, with very little real contact with their own soul. When neither grand projects nor numbing strategies solve the inner void, the third reaction appears: self-attack. They turn their confusion into an indictment of their entire being. I'm lazy. I'm broken. I'm ungrateful. I'm a failure. There is something fundamentally wrong with me. They stay up at night searching for labels, comparing themselves to people who seem to be moving forward and building a second layer of suffering on top of the original emptiness. It is like standing in a burning room and blaming themselves for not enjoying the heat. Trying to fix themselves from the same burned-out identity that created the problem is like trying to put out a fire with more fire. At some point, the only move that makes sense is to stop fixing and start listening. The question shifts from what massive thing will save me to something gentler and more honest. What, even if it's small, doesn't hurt right now? It is not an epic question. It doesn't sound glamorous, but it opens a very different door. Instead of searching for a grand mission that will instantly make life meaningful again, this person starts scanning their day for tiny moments that are not hostile to their nervous system. They pay attention to what feels neutral, slightly soothing, or quietly interesting, not exciting, just not heavy. A helpful way to imagine this process is as an old radio full of static. For years, the volume of noise, expectations, comparisons, hyperproductivity, pressure to be extraordinary, has been turned up so loud that any real signal gets drowned. When nothing feels worth wanting, the solution might not be to add yet another station, another voice, another set of instructions. It might be to turn the noise down. As the static lowers, something subtle begins to emerge. A thin, honest, almost fragile signal that was always there, but could never compete with the chaos of external demands. In daily life, that signal often looks embarrassingly small. A short walk without headphones, just hearing the natural sounds of the street instead of drowning out the world. A conversation where they don't feel the need to impress, teach, or entertain, just exist beside another human being. Cooking something very simple, not for a photo, not for applause, but just to feel their own hands moving through a task from beginning to end. Real desire rarely arrives shouting, with a marching band and spotlights. Most of the time, it appears as a soft whisper that says, "This doesn't feel heavy. Stay here a little longer." Following that whisper is how many people begin, slowly, to discover what is still worth wanting. Imagine a woman who has spent years chasing grand missions. Every few months, she launches herself into another big project, a new business, a bold creative venture, a radical spiritual path. Each time she believes, "Now I've finally found my thing." She posts about it, talks about it, reads everything she can. But somewhere along the way, the energy drains out and she is left with the same familiar emptiness. One day, after yet another collapsed attempt, she notices the only time her chest feels slightly lighter is when she waters the plants on her small balcony. No audience, no performance, no big purpose, just her, the soil, the hose, and a few fragile leaves insisting on living. She doesn't call it a calling. She doesn't rename her social media bio around it. She simply starts spending a little more time there, observing new leaves, repotting a plant, watching how something slowly comes back to life under patient care. Without realizing it, that quiet balcony becomes the first place in a long time where she feels present instead of performing. Her life doesn't magically transform overnight, but she begins to have one corner of the day that doesn't feel like pretending. That is how real desire sometimes returns. Not as a lightning bolt, but as a small space where the soul can finally breathe. Now picture a man who built his entire identity on being impressive. Achievements, titles, high standards. He has always been the capable one. When the emptiness catches up, he numbs himself with screens, noise, and constant busyness. One evening, almost by accident, he finds an old notebook in a drawer and starts writing. Not poetry, not polished lines, not something he plans to publish. Just raw, unfiltered thoughts that would probably embarrass him if anyone else read them. There are no likes, no comments, no instant rewards. Yet those anonymous pages quickly become the only place where he doesn't feel like a product he has to market. He keeps returning to the notebook, not because it fits some strategy for success, but because it is the one activity that doesn't feel like lying to himself. The words aren't beautiful, but they are honest. That honesty feels like oxygen. Nearby, there is someone else whose worth has always been tied to fixing others, being the problem solver, the emotional caretaker, the one with advice ready. The only moments that don't feel draining are when they simply listen without trying to save anyone, just staying present. Little by little, they realize that what feels worth wanting is not the heroic role, but the authentic connection. In all these stories, a pattern emerges. What comes back to life is rarely what impresses the world. It is what doesn't feel like self-betrayal on the inside. When someone is in this place, grand advice like, reinvent your entire life, or just follow your passion doesn't help. It feels distant, harsh, almost offensive. The idea of a total transformation is not inspiring. It is exhausting. So the strategy needs to become much humbler and more compassionate. Instead of demanding a revolution, they focus on not abandoning themselves today. This might look like protecting the basics, getting whatever sleep they can, eating something that gives their body a little strength, taking a quick shower, completing one or two small tasks that stop the day from dissolving into nothing. The guiding question changes. It is no longer, how do I redesign everything about my life right now? But what is one thing today that doesn't feel like pushing a broken car uphill? They can set tiny experiments. Notice 3 moments in the day that hurt a little less than the rest, or feel slightly softer, or bring a small sense of relief. Maybe it is the 5 minutes after a warm shower, the quiet of an early morning before the world wakes up, or the brief walk to buy bread from the bakery. These are not dramatic breakthroughs, but they are cracks in the walls where something different can start to shine through. In this phase, massive, impulsive decisions become suspicious. Quitting everything overnight, moving to another country on a whim, ending every relationship in one sweep. These might be disguised attempts to escape the discomfort of the corridor, not authentic expressions of new desire. Instead of detonating their life, they sit down and gently list what still feels minimally bearable, oddly interesting, or quietly kind to their nervous system. The list might include silly small things, but those things are real. You don't have to build a new life today, the wiser part of them whispers. You just have to not abandon yourself today. As that truth sinks in, the whole crisis begins to look less like the death of desire and more like the changing of its source. With time, a deeper realization slowly surfaces. The problem was never that they lost the ability to want. Desire did not die. It simply stopped flowing toward places that no longer match who they are becoming. For years, they were wanting from a younger, more frightened version of themselves. A version assembled from other people's expectations, cultural checklists, and borrowed dreams. That version is now dissolving. The catalog of desires it created is losing its power. What feels like the end of wanting is actually the end of wanting from the wrong identity. Looking back, the map of their journey becomes clearer. The exhaustion of chasing anything that moved. The heartbreak of getting what they wanted and feeling strangely empty. The corridor where nothing felt worth wanting. The tiny, fragile wants that still felt honest. None of these were random accidents. The emptiness wasn't simply a malfunction. It was feedback. It was life saying, you cannot keep trying to feed your soul with what doesn't nourish it and expect to feel alive. Wanting itself is being rewritten, from wanting to impress, escape, or prove, to wanting what feels quietly truthful in their own body. So when nothing feels worth wanting, perhaps it is because the old list of things to want was written by a self that no longer exists. The new desires are not born in loud announcements. They grow slowly in silence through small moments of non-betrayal. This person is not broken. They are being recalibrated. Less fireworks, more integrity. Less chasing, more listening. And as this understanding settles in, a new invitation appears. Not the pressure to become who they were before, but the chance to walk toward a future built on wants that finally recognize who they truly are. Before they move on, it can help to ground all of this in very concrete, almost embarrassingly small practices. For example, they might decide that once a day they will pause for 60 seconds and simply ask, on a scale from 1 to 10, how heavy does my life feel right now? There is no right answer and no prize for saying a low number. The point is to register their own inner weather instead of living entirely on autopilot. Over time, those daily check-ins become a kind of emotional map, showing which people, places, and activities consistently make everything feel heavier, and which ones let a little air in. Another small experiment is to keep a lightness log. At the end of each day, they write down 2 or 3 moments that felt even slightly less suffocating. It might be laughing at a stupid meme, petting a dog on the street, organizing a drawer, or hearing a song that made their shoulders drop a bit. These are not majestic signs from the universe, they are small data points. Yet when collected over weeks, they often reveal patterns. Certain environments, types of conversations, or activities keep showing up as tiny islands of ease. That's not random. It's their deeper self voting very quietly for what is still worth wanting. They can also gently question the beliefs that fuel the old treadmill. Whenever they catch themselves thinking, I'll be okay as soon as, They can pause and ask, who told me that? Where did I learn that this specific achievement equals safety or worth? Sometimes the answer is a parent, a teacher, a cultural myth, or a fear-based story they built as a teenager. Seeing the origin of a belief doesn't instantly dissolve it, but it creates space. Instead of being trapped inside the thought, they are now looking at it from the outside, which is the first step toward choosing something different. It might even help to imagine a younger version of themselves, the one who first believed that achieving certain things would finally make them enough. They can picture that younger self sitting across from them and gently explain what they have discovered. That some of those promises were empty, that some of those goals were built on fear, and that it's okay to retire them. This is not about mocking who they used to be, but about honoring how hard that younger self tried to keep them safe with the information they had at the time. Letting go of old desires often begins with thanking the part of them that created those desires in the first place. Little by little, these kinds of conversations and experiments begin to change how they walk through the world. Instead of seeing themselves as a broken machine that no longer wants correctly, they start to see themselves as a human being whose desire is becoming more honest. They stop rushing to fix every numb moment and start asking what that numbness is trying to protect them from. They stop taking every dip in motivation as a moral failure and begin to treat it as an invitation to look closer at the story underneath. In that shift, self-hatred loosens its grip and curiosity takes its place. Curiosity makes room for kindness, and kindness makes room for new desire. When they approach their inner world with less violence and more patience, they create the conditions for something real to grow. It becomes possible to say, I don't know exactly what I want yet, but I trust that if I keep listening to what feels less heavy and more honest, something truer will eventually take shape. That kind of trust is not blind optimism. It is a choice to stay in relationship with themselves even when the map is not fully drawn. And maybe that is the quiet heart of this whole journey, refusing to abandon themselves in the season when nothing feels worth wanting. Anyone can love their life when everything is clear and exciting. The deeper work is learning how to stay with themselves in the fog, in the corridor, in the in-between. If they can practice that, with small questions, small logs of lightness, small acts of gentleness, then by the time their new desires are ready to emerge, they won't just have a different life. They will have a different relationship with the one person who will be there for all of it, themselves. If they want something even more practical, they can choose one tiny anchor ritual per day that asks nothing from them except presence. It could be making a cup of tea and actually tasting it, without scrolling at the same time. It could be stretching for a few minutes after getting out of bed, just to feel their body say good morning. It could be lighting a candle at night for no reason other than marking the fact that they made it through another day. None of these rituals will magically solve their life, but each one is a small way of saying, I'm here with you, to themselves. Another gentle practice is to temporarily lower the volume on comparison. That might mean muting certain accounts, taking a short break from platforms that constantly showcase other people's highlight reels, or unfollowing narratives that leave them feeling behind instead of inspired. This is not about envy or bitterness. It is about giving their nervous system a break from being measured every 5 seconds. In the quiet that follows, their own rhythm has a chance to reappear, and they may notice that some of the things they thought they should want were never truly theirs. Finally, they can remember that this season is not a verdict on their future. It is a chapter, not the whole book. Many people who later build grounded, meaningful lives go through a phase where everything feels flat or numb. The difference is that some decide to interpret that phase as proof that they are defective, while others slowly learn to see it as proof that their old life and old wants can no longer contain who they are becoming. If they choose that second interpretation, even this heavy, confusing time becomes part of a larger story of waking up instead of a footnote in a story about failure. If they need a simple starting point, it can be this. For 1 week, treat their inner world less like a broken engine and more like a friend finally telling the truth. When that friend says, I'm tired, they can answer, of course you're tired. We've been running on that treadmill for years. When that friend says, nothing feels worth it right now, they can respond, then let's stop forcing what we already know is false and pay attention to what feels even a little bit real. It's a small change in language, but inside it opens a very different kind of space. In the end, this is not only a story about desire, it is also a story about dignity, about no longer begging old dreams to rescue them and no longer outsourcing their worth to goals that don't even know their name. It is about beginning again.